Hello, everyone, and welcome to FrennDiagram. This is the podcast where two friends catch up and find common ground between their favorite media. I'm Remy.
I'm Kat, and today we will be discussing the 2023 film Evil Does Not Exist, and we are once again joined by our special guest, M. Grebner-Gaddis, who hosts Rooted. Warning, spoilers ahead. Hi, everyone.
Hey!
Hello.
Welcome back, Em.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me so I can terrorize your audience once again.
Oh my gosh, thank you for suggesting that we all get together for a spooky season ep. I am super excited about this, and what a great excuse to watch Evil Does Not Exist.
I know, I feel like this was the perfect film to cover on our crossover episode with Rooted. But I could be assuming too much, Em, but it just seemed like something you'd really be down with.
Oh, you should see my notes.
Oh, Kat, I have a short update for you before we get into the film. If you're interested in hearing about how my Vulture Film League fantasy team shaped up.
Oh my god, yes.
So this year, as you know, Kat, you participated last year in Vulture's
Shamefully, my shameful performance.
Movie Fantasy League. And this year, I was excited to participate again, but I felt like I had much less idea of what my team should be. The award season, I think, is pretty wide open still. And so, if you're not familiar with Vulture's Fantasy League, you have 100 fictional dollars that you start with, and you have to use those 100 fictional dollars to draft a team of 8 films. And you're rewarded points based on how those films perform in terms of award season nominations and wins, as well as box office and critical success. And each film from 2024 is assigned a dollar amount. So, for example, Gladiator 2 was $40. That was the most expensive one on the list this year. And you have to have 8 films. So I actually was scrounging around and got a lot of $2 films this year because I had some that I refused to leave off my list. So I have a lot of Hail Marys down at the bottom. But do you want to hear how my list stacked up?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I had 3 that were absolutely non-negotiables, and those 3 films were Anora, Dune 2, and The Brutalist. I'm living for The Brutalist. I can't wait to see it, and all my hopes and dreams are pinned on that film. It's very healthy. After that, I really, really wanted Challengers and Nosferatu, and got both of them at a good price, but that left me with approximately $6 to get my final 3 films. And so I took some risks, and I hope they pay off. I got All We Imagine Is Light, The Life of Chuck, and my final film that I drafted was Evil Does Not Exist. That was a bargain for $2.
Very nice.
So we'll see how that goes, but I was really excited to tell you guys, especially because that's the film we're going to discuss today.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm excited that you have Life of Chuck on there, and that it was only $2.
I know, it's a huge
What
gamble, and I suspect it was only $2 because it does not yet have a 2024 distribution date, so it may not. It might be my Bike Riders for this year, which was my underperformer last year because it didn't come out in time. Thanks a lot, Disney. But anyway,
I think that's an excellent lineup. I think that's amazing. Dune 2. I want to watch that again now. I want to watch all of the movies on that list.
I know. I can't wait for Nosferatu. That one was a pick from the heart. I don't think it's going to have a ton of award success, but I'm hoping for box office and just general joy.
It could be fun, though. It could be great.
Yeah.
Comes out over Christmas, too, so it could pull in a certain kind of crowd, you know?
Yeah.
Could be cool.
We'll see.
Oof, I'm excited.
Me too. We'll see how it goes.
Do you have anything that's coming out in the remainder of the year that you're really, really excited about?
Nosferatu's big in our house, so we're excited for that one. No, I feel like a lot of the things we were really looking forward to, like, watching have kind of already come out for the year.
Yeah.
I'm sure my husband is listening to this and saying, like, she forgot this one thing. But no, I think that's pretty much most of our stuff. I think we're looking forward to 2025 now.
Mm-hmm. Have you had a big favorite so far of 2024?
That's a tough one. I feel like I've been doing a lot of comfort rewatching through everything. I'm trying to think of what we've seen in theaters this year, even.
What have you been comfort rewatching?
This movie was really great for me because there's, like, really 3 key things that will determine if I like a movie. Does it start with the quintessential indie shot of the woods? Yes, we're in. If there are children, are they precocious? And is the score good? So, like, A Birders Guide to Everything, my favorite movie of all time. No Shame. Ben Kingsley, Alex Wolff, Cody Smith-McPhee, who I'm still obsessed with. I'm going to make you guys watch it at some point.
I have not seen this.
And then there's also, obviously, Hunt for the Wilder People. Amazing, A Chef's Kiss.
That's on my list. I know.
Twilight, I have no shame. I'll watch Twilight anytime I'm having a bad day.
Twilight.
We're putting Twilight on. Like,
you know, I've been watching Twilight on repeat this year, dude.
I feel Twilight is a good indication of how our mental health is, Kat. Like, how many times have we watched it in the year? And then if I'm digging deep into the drugs and watching Donnie Darko, pray for me. I've been watching Donnie Darko a lot.
Yeah, I watched Donnie Darko for the first time this year because you had brought it up. We were hanging out, and I was like, I've never seen Donnie Darko. And Emma's talking about how much she loved that film in college. So I guess I should watch this. And now I can't get it out of my head. So
you could have come, had I known, I would have been like, come on down to Webster and join my Donnie Darko cult in which we watch this movie every week and then have detailed discussions with different people from our university who are also into it. It was really
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does sound very, very cool.
I can't remember a single film I've seen in theaters. We've gone to movies in theaters this year, but I don't remember anything. We watched the new Salem's Lot yesterday.
Oh, I still haven't watched that yet.
I haven't seen it yet.
I've been meaning to.
Is it good?
Yeah. I think I liked the older one a little bit better, but it was still pretty fun. It's definitely like a good popcorn movie if you just want to have like a kind of fun, scary time. But it's not like too scary.
I haven't seen either of them, the old one or the new one, so.
The new one has Bill Camp.
It's true.
For all my Bill Camp heads out there. All right, should we get into the discussion?
Ooh, I think so.
All right, let's talk about Evil Does Not Exist, the 2023 film from Ryusuke Hamaguchi, and co-written by Ryusuke Hamaguchi and Ayuko Ishibashi, and starring Hitoshi Omika as Takumi. And Evil Does Not Exist follows Takumi, who is a single father to a daughter named Hana in an idyllic mountain town in Japan. His quiet, spring-fed village is thrust into conflict when an outside company imposes their plans to open a glamping site that will spoil the water supply downstream and increase the risk for forest fires in their village. This story gives us a methodical and multifaceted perspective on human relationships with the intersection between responsibility, commerce, and the environment, as well as provides a detailed and frank depiction of corporate non-accountability contrasted with the anguish of personal responsibility. This was my second time seeing this film. I caught it earlier this year in its run at Film at Lincoln Center, and now it's on Criterion Channel for any of the Criterion peeps. Em, was this your first time seeing Evil Does Not Exist?
It was.
Kat, what about you?
This was also my first time seeing Evil Does Not Exist. And I really enjoyed it. What did you think, Em?
I really liked it, especially as a person currently studying like permaculture and landscape architecture. It was really interesting to see a lot of the theories and things that I'm learning in my ethics class that's like kind of tethered as part of it.
Perfect.
And those like kind of principles that come with like what is true permaculture versus like landscape architecture.
Ooh, tell me more. I'm like actually very, very interested in this.
Yeah, was there maybe a scene or a discussion in the film that you think would be particularly pertinent to some of that coursework you're doing?
Yeah, I think the scene where they're like really sitting down to discuss those plans and you have that town, and obviously like, especially here in America, most of our population is not as well versed in understanding the kind of role that they play as caretakers of the land. And I think all over we see that kind of divide. And I think in permaculture, one thing that's made very clear is that like that is a very core tenet of what it is to be a person and what it is to exist in nature is to be a caretaker. And in permaculture, that's a really important piece of like what you're doing is really designing a system that can support people and support how you'd like to use the land in a way that also supports the land and the other things that live with you. And I think that scene where they're kind of talking about, you know, oh, you can't have the septic tank there. Like those are real conversations that you should be having. And I think an important balance and what sets permaculture, true permaculture, apart from landscape architecture is that decision that like, yes, technically it might cost like more money, but money's not the most important resource.
Yeah, the town hall scene with the glamping people where they're unveiling their plans. I think that's my favorite scene from the whole movie, not just because they did a great job taking time to outline very clear points from a lot of different perspectives in the community, but because it allowed the viewer to understand each of those points as they unfolded and how they interrelated between members of the community and obviously concern for the environment in the village itself. And I think it was also a really interesting depiction of those discussions because the opposition to the people in the village, the two representatives from the glamping company, are responsive to what they're hearing in different ways, but they didn't completely stonewall the people speaking up for the village. They actually listened and seemed impacted by the responses that they had. And I thought that was a really nuanced way to portray that individuals that may work for a corporation aren't a one-to-one substitution for the corporate ethos. Like an individual can have a conscience that you can communicate with.
Yeah. And I loved in that scene how the script was written for that scene and how the dialogue was written for that scene, because I think that it had kind of heated moments. Like there were heated members of the crowd, especially kind of the younger man that's sitting like right in front and kind of providing the like unvarnished like commentary of like, you guys are just doing this for the subsidies and you guys are just doing this for the money and you're just looking to make a quick buck off of us. And I really liked that it was balanced between that kind of mentality, but also the very, very reasonable stances of people trying to appeal to these individuals as people and as outsiders who are going to be potentially moving to this community. Like, I can't remember her name, but the woman who makes noodles. And she says, I moved here from Tokyo and the water is my life. Like, I moved here because of the water. The water changed my whole world here. And if you ruin the water, like, you rob me of my purpose of being here. But this is also not about me. Like, this is about this community and the water means something to this community. And I loved how reasonable and how eloquently people fought that fight. I thought that it was extremely effective, and that's why they got the emotional response out of the two employees that they did. Because I think when you react very like reactively and very kind of over emotionally and you don't think before you speak, people can kind of write you off, and they weren't giving those employees the chance to write them off. They were speaking very reasonably and saying, well, we want to communicate with you and we want to make a plan that works because we know that this is going to work better than, you know, you guys just doing it anyway and kind of steamrolling us. So I thought that was a very effective scene.
Yeah, everybody's points were so well reasoned and well supported, and I wish I could speak like that in any sort of town hall setting. Kat, you make a great point that so many different people made appeals from different perspectives, and they all worked so well in concert. And even the man that was a little bit more emotional than the rest, he was still pretty measured.
Yes, he was mean, yeah.
I couldn't believe how calm everyone was in that scene.
Yeah. I think it kind of like models an idealistic like way of that going. And it kind of says like, wouldn't it be nice if we could all just like communicate with each other and listen to each other and actually hear what each other is saying, and make the effort to try. I loved that. It felt very much like a utopia in that sense to me, even though like they're going through a conflict and going through something very difficult for this community. Like, I think that seeing a community communicate and try to work towards a solution and seeing that be effective was like just wonderful to see.
Right. And I think it stands as a really strong example of exactly what you're saying, Kat, especially when it is immediately contrasted with the two employees of the company relaying their findings to their boss. It seems like a C-suite guy for their company in a Zoom meeting, and he has the type of corporate response you might expect. He's completely uninterested in the reasons for what the community is asking for. He only cares about the budget. He only cares about the profits. He only cares about the timeline so they can get the subsidies. And it's painful watching the two employees that actually took on the feedback from the community try to relay that, and they get steamrolled. And that was a hard watch. What did you think of that discussion, Em?
I feel the same way. I think it's also very interesting for me to watch this coming from having a PR background and having worked with C-suite executives before who are very steadfast in like my way or the highway, but also always having worked with a foot in sustainability and like cutting my teeth in the industry in sustainability. I think they did a great job of really highlighting the tactics that we know work in communicating points, right? Like not making the people you are talking to feel stupid for not understanding the problem, but instead highlighting, you know, like this community is super dependent on water. And so when you do anything that might contaminate or threaten that livelihood, like we get upset, but we get upset because it's not just about us. Like if we contaminate the water, we contaminate not just our livelihoods, but everything downstream. And so that's why we don't want you to do this. We would be happy to consult with you on where a better place to put it might be. And I've also been on the other side of that conversation. So I think they did a great job of really capturing that and making you feel the discomfort that you do feel when you have to be like, hey, these people are saying this and like, you're not listening. And then just hearing like, yeah, and I have the money. So do you want your job or not?
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely humanizes. Like I'm so glad that we get that conversation and that we get that side of the story for the two employees that we see at the very beginning, because it would have been so easy for the film to demonize everyone at that company, and it would have been so easy to just like demonize everyone that is part of this glamping project, because that would have been lazy, I think. And we've all seen that movie, right? But we get so much time with these two people. We get to spend so much time in the car while they drive. We get to hear about this guy talking about how lonely he is and how he wants to get married. I thought the movie was so contemplative, and it took its time to let us get to know these people as humans and let us get attached to them. And I appreciated that. I think my favorite scene is the scene where they're just driving in the car. I could watch them just like talk in the car all day. I was like so interested in getting to know these two people who like want to quit their job and move to the man wants to like quit his job and move to the woods. Yes. And he's like so frustrated with his job that he like starts screaming about like how how did he get here? Like, I totally can feel that. Like, I can relate to that sensation. And then he has this like lovely, genuine kind of transition where even though it's naive, right? It's naive to just be like, I'm going to quit my job and be this like caretaker for this glamping site. But like, he's trying to learn and he's trying to embrace it wholeheartedly. And I thought that was just like really lovely to watch. I think he's like my favorite character arc to watch.
Yeah, I completely agree that those two characters definitely have the most arc throughout the film and are a fascinating aspect of the film because it breaks up the homogeny of what the corporation could be represented as. I also think that I love the way we watch those two characters, Mayuzumi and Takahashi. They follow Takumi around town for about a day, I think, in this transition of attitude. And they watch some of the tasks that he does, like chopping wood, which he's really good at, like insanely good at chopping wood. Incredible. I wish I could do that.
Did everyone, raise your hand, or just verbally say I if you wanted to chop wood after watching him chop wood.
Yes. I wanted to chop wood and rip a cig right after so that this guy is living right. And then go to the noodle house, obviously. God, yeah. That place is gorgeous.
You get to like chop wood and it's a slow morning. You harvest the water for your noodles and then you're like, hi, can I have some noodles, please? Why do we invent the 9 to 5 when we could all be doing that all day, every day? What is wrong with humanity?
What have they done to us? What did they do to us?
Are you thinking of Dharma and Doggy Door?
Yes, that was a direct quote. Thank you, Kat. Yes. And essentially, like you pointed out, Em, they go and they collect water from the stream, which are some of my favorite moments from the film. I particularly love the way Hamaguchi shot the water filling at the stream, because the second time around, when I watch a film, I always have more capacity or like bandwidth to notice less apparent details, or at least less apparent to me. So the second time around, I always notice choices in camera movement more. And something I found really interesting about the way Hamaguchi films the scenes at the stream where they fill the water is that in many normal shots, he's tracking a car across the landscape or tracking people walking or moving across the landscape, and the camera tracks and moves with the person. But many times, or almost every time they're filling water at the stream, the camera is completely locked down. It doesn't move. It's locked down on the stream itself. And people are filling up the water, and then many times they get up and they leave the frame, or they move to the very edge of the frame, and the camera stays locked on the stream. And I loved that imagery. And in my mind, that was something of a reminder that these natural resources exist, whether we need them or not. They're not here for us, and they don't just disappear when we aren't looking at them or paying attention to them. They're here all the time, and they've been here longer than us, and we might move into the frame or move out of the frame in, the scale of time or human existence, but we are not the focal point. And that's what I interpreted from those choices, and I loved it. I thought it worked really well.
I love that interpretation. I hadn't thought of that at all. Oh my gosh. That's such a good interpretation of that. Because I had noticed that the camera was very still, and because I had thought wow, they must have so much good B-roll.
Oh yeah.
Just like the stream. I was like, I would love to just watch that B-roll. But yeah, you have such a good point there.
Thank you. Let's see. Some other things that I loved, in addition to the chopping wood and smoking and eating noodles, and sitting by the clear streams. Well, I love the score. And M, I think that's something you obviously really responded to as well.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the score?
I thought it was really great. I often find the score to be like a make or break thing in movies for me. And I have this thing where I either want it to be music that I would pick, or I want it to be music that I don't notice. And I feel like this movie does a really great job of picking music that you don't notice as much. And I think they use music in a way that really helps to underscore without having to be like a constant presence, which I thought was really nice.
Mm-hmm. It certainly was just there in select moments. It's an original score by Ishibashi, and I thought it was a really versatile score because they use it several times throughout. And it's fascinating because the score is so layered that at times it feels very haunting or suspenseful, but at other times it feels very beautiful and rich. And it morphs as the score progresses. And because there's so much layer and nuance to the emotion in it, it works in many different contexts throughout the film. So I thought that was just an incredible piece of composing. What did you think, Kat?
I thought it was very calming.
Yeah.
I just want to watch that movie like over and over again on a loop because it's just like so calming. I feel like you could just have it on in the background. It's very, like you said, procedural, and I don't know. I think the score, while haunting, like you said, it's not like very intense ever. It's like very almost, it kind of melts into the background. And I thought it just like added to that slow pace. And I watched this movie with Scott. And so we were talking about it today, and he was like, how long was that movie? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I think it was like an hour and 40 something minutes. And He was like, it felt so much longer. And I was like, I think it's just because it's like such a slow pace. Like it just really takes its time with everything. And you don't really ever have, like, there's a couple of like faster paced moments, but even those are like still quite slow. And the score doesn't really get like intense with those, which kind of adds speed to a film. When the score speeds up, that kind of tricks your brain into thinking like, oh, fast, time has sped up. And so I think that it just kind of added to that like slow nature of the film, which I really enjoyed. I'd like to watch more films like that. It kind of makes me think of like what you had said about like Perfect Days, and like it kind of feels like kind of not similar in theme or anything like that, but just kind of similar in like kind of how I think it would make me feel to watch it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and I would definitely say Hamaguchi's film prior to this one, Drive My Car, has very much of the same approach and pacing. It's much more focused on interpersonal emotions and actually performance and acting and theater. So if that's something that strikes your interest, I would say Drive My Car is very consistent with Evil Does Not Exist in how he's applying that pacing to the story.
Yeah, definitely. I was wondering if you had additional, like, context. I felt like I was missing some important context for some of, like, the hunting stuff, like the hints at, like, the gunshots and things that we were getting throughout the film. Because obviously, I'm just going to confess something right here, right now. The end didn't fucking make sense to me. And I had a really hard time. I've been thinking about the end a lot today, and I've been reading Reddit threads about the end today, and I've been having a hard time because to me, the movie felt like I loved watching it. I had such a great time watching this film. I thought it was beautiful. I loved the story it was telling until the last, like, 5 minutes of the film. And then I felt like it lost me, and I didn't understand the choices that were being made. and I've been like trying, I keep like, I'm like, well, it makes sense if X, and I like keep trying to like retrofit an explanation in my head, and I don't necessarily think that it's supposed to make sense. I don't know. The general consensus online is that it's not supposed to make sense, and that's fine.
Well, let's give a real spoiler warning, because I want to dig into this a little bit and talk about my interpretation of the end, because I think an interpretation can be offered, and I have one to offer. But Em, I want to know your impression of the ending and if you have an interpretation first.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if ours match. So throughout the film, they constantly reference that field. And I think, and like, be careful around the field. I think ultimately that field is meant to be kind of like a third transitional space.
Oh, wow.
And we see a lot of this in like different cultures where like things can kind of transition and move, and there are places that are like spiritually thinner. And so I think ultimately the idea with the ending is that girl is lost and has like passed on. And it's sacrificing one life for another life.
That was my initial interpretation.
But I might be just really dense and missing something. So that's why I'm so curious about what Remy thinks.
Oh, that's really interesting, because your interpretation is much more metaphysical / spiritual than mine. Mine is more grounded and completely different. But I think both of them both either or neither could be true. My interpretation is based on the repeated mention of gut-shot deer. They mention that deer when they see a deer skeleton in the beginning of the film, and then Takumi mentions them again, I think, when he's taking the company people around.
Yeah, he mentions like that a deer won't attack people because the campsite's going to be built on a deer path. And he's
exactly.
Like, deer won't attack people unless they're gut shot.
Precisely. And I think that's a really important piece of dialogue, because my interpretation is that Takumi is like a gut-shot deer. He's very peaceful. No one's bothering him in his life in the village until this threat comes along. This threat of the glamping site, which threatens to ruin everything. And when the stress of that impending threat is compounded by the stress of his daughter, his only immediate family, going missing, to me that is tantamount to like a mortal wound. And so he's in a threatened state. And very much like a deer who is hurt and gut shot might lash out at anything that comes near it, whether the thing coming near it is a threat or trying to help them. They're a deer. They don't know the difference. They only know how to be defensive in that state. And that's very much how Takumi acts when he lashes out at Takahashi, because on face value, that seems like displaced violence when he should be protecting his daughter from the deer. But I think a reading of that is that throughout this entire film, we've been thinking of the humans as separate from nature and stewards of nature, and all of the decisions have been about how the humans are managing nature. But fewer people have been speaking about how humans might consider themselves still as a part of nature and might still share a lot of the same instincts. And so if you actually don't think of yourself as apart from nature, you might accept that you could act in the same way as a deer that is hurt. Like, you are not better than the deer. You might act very much like a deer. You are part of nature. You are an animal. Yeah. And so to me, that ending is like, don't think of yourself as better than nature or separate from nature. Think of yourself as an element of nature that responds in the same way. And how would you respond if you are threatened with this type of imminent threat to your safety and your loved ones? That was my interpretation.
Yeah. And I totally get that. Like, I had, that was basically the explanation that I was trying to retrofit of like, well, like, he's like a gut shot deer, but it's still like, I think the main issue that I have, and like the main thing I don't understand, right, is that to me, it doesn't really feel like he is threatened by the glamping, but like he's like willing to help these people. He's willing to say like, we haven't made up our minds yet. We're willing to accept outsiders. We're willing to work with you as long as you listen to our concerns. Like he's like one of the voices of reason in that meeting. I agree with like the gut shot deer. I think that's what they're trying to do. But what doesn't make sense to me is that the real problem seems to be these hunters that are in the woods shooting deer carelessly and not like continuing to hunt them until the deer is dead, or just like are bad at hunting and are leaving deer gut shot. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And that has nothing to do with the glamping. And so I was wondering if I was missing context for the hunting and like who the hunters were. Are they from the city? Is that another city threat? Because it's clearly like a trickle-down effect of the hunters that these gut-shot deer keep showing up and that's what has killed the daughter. And so it seems to be revolving around that. But then to me, it doesn't really make sense then, like why the glamping in the first place and like why even, I don't know.
I'm wondering if it's meant to kind of build like what Remy was suggesting with like the daughter just being kind of the last straw for him, where he was like, I've done everything I can to stay peaceful in this remediation, but it's clear like no one cares about what we're saying or what we're trying to do. Like people just keep coming in and taking and like I'm feeling hurt. And so maybe it's meant to be like a kind of crescendo. That's all I can really think. Remy, what do you think?
I think it also, the hunting could be a parallel to what the corporation owners in Tokyo are doing. They're outsiders that are working largely out of frame. Like we don't really see anything except for that one meeting. Mm-hmm. And they're doing exactly what you said, Kat. They're acting carelessly and basically half-assing everything because they don't have the conviction to do things the right way and they don't care what the consequences are. So they'll design a site with the septic tank in the wrong spot that's going to be harmful and with not enough staff to prevent the threat of forest fires. And they'll do whatever is convenient for them, no matter what the cost is for the people that have to contend with the consequences locally. So I think it could be a parallel, but there certainly could be more context that I don't know about the socio-political feelings around hunting in Japan.
Yeah, and I like didn't know if I had like missed something in the dialogue about the hunting and like who was doing the hunting, because sometimes when I'm like watching sub movies and only for the first time, like sometimes I'll be focused on what's going on in the environment and I'll like miss part of the dialogue. And so I wasn't sure if I was like missing extra context of like, are these people visitors from the city or I don't know. And so I was just kind of confused.
I think it could be an interesting reading if you are thinking of the hunters as a parallel for the C-suite people, because their disregard for the consequences of their actions are the C-suite glamping site. There might be immediate effects of their choices, but the brunt of those choices will probably be felt by the younger people. And so the younger people in the community, I mean. And so it could be meaningful that the deer who represents those consequences injures the daughter, because those consequences have the biggest impact on the youngest people in the community. So that could be meaningful as well.
Also, I had major issues with the fact that he just like kept forgetting his kid and like
see, I was like, let her go. That's what I would do, but that's why I can't be a parent, because I would be like, go out in the woods and know all of the plants and you don't need to go to school.
Well, I mean, yeah.
At the same time,
but also, like, the fucking chief told her, don't go in that fucking field. bitch. You want to know who went in the fucking field?
She did.
This little girl. And then she got killed by a deer.
And it was so sad. And you're right. Like, cause there was a point where the question I mostly had was like, why is her school just let her walk home? Like, her dad clearly wants to pick her up.
And then the teacher's just like, ha 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 ha.
I was like, I know.
You forgot her. I'm like, bitch, this is a kid. Like, this is like an 8-year-old little girl. You're not just like, haha, goofs and gaffs.
And that is
like a small child. She could get hit by a car.
It is a big cultural difference, though.
Sorry, can we just talk about, like, how far away this cabin is? Because, like, we're in the car for a hot minute when he, like, drives away from the school. And, like, we're in that car, like, for a hot minute.
We are.
I don't know how far she's got to walk to get back to that cabin, but it seems like a long walk.
It's definitely at least a few miles. I will say that there is a big cultural difference in Japan where children are given more independence and freedom and trusted from much younger ages to, like, go do chores and go be in public. So I think part of it is just our American overly used to violent hearts being like, oh my God, like, she's a child. Don't let her go out there. And then people in Japan are probably like, why do they have their kids on leashes?
Yeah.
But here I'm like, I don't
know. I understand that, but like, he's like, wild. Oh shoot, I forgot my kid. Like, clearly he has an expectation set for himself that he should go pick up his kid.
Yeah.
And then he keeps not doing it. And like, that's frustrating to me. And then the kid's like, I'll just walk home, and then she gets killed.
Yeah. That part, 0% good.
And then also, like, when the lady cuts her hand, it's like...
Oh, that was too much.
And, like, we're looking for the kid. I'm like, I'm sorry, lady, you can patch yourself up. I'm looking for my kid. Yeah. We, like, patch her hand up for, like, a solid 30 minutes, probably. That's crucial time to be looking for our child.
She really drags down the team.
She really does. Well, she contributes nothing.
I don't think it's her fault. I think it's his fault. He could have kept looking for his kid.
Yeah.
She can go back, like, the guy can drive her back to town. He can keep looking for his kid. It's, like, I don't know.
Just better allocation of resources needed.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's I will fair. Say,
I'm sorry to, like, victim blame this poor father, but, like, I do think that he's made some crucial mistakes, and we see the foreshadowing very, very early on that, like, he's gonna forget his kid. She's gonna go wander around. I thought she was gonna get shot by one of the hunters.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know. It just seems like maybe we should have, like, a plan at least for what you do after school. You go straight home. You don't, like, go wander around in the field.
Yeah.
That the chief told you not to go wander around in and, like, go watch the deer.
At least a spot where you're like, we're going to sit under the Japanese dogwood tree until dad comes to get you if you don't want to be at school. Like, if you want to play in the woods, that's cool, but you're going to meet me here and you're not going to go past these points. Maybe would have been a good call.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's a fair reaction, I think.
I did love the shot where we see him, like, trying to catch up to her. So, like, he drives his car, and then he's, like, he starts running all of a sudden, and he goes out of frame. So we're, like, panning.
Yeah.
And we go behind, like, some mossy. Yeah. And it makes my heart race, because I'm like, what's going on? Like, I'm, like, primed to be like, what happened to the little girl already? It's, like, 10 minutes into the movie. And then she, like, is just on his back, and he's, like, picked her up, and he's giving her a little piggyback ride. And it's, like, so wholesome and sweet. But I loved, like, that build-up, because you're so kind of concerned. And it's, like, already telling you, like, the foreshadowing has taken hold of you.
Yeah, I loved that shot as well. Do you guys have any double features you'd recommend with this film?
I feel like I have a few ideas of things that could work. Like, you absolutely could do a double feature with, like, Hunt for the Wilder People or A Birder's Guide to Everything, because they both do feature heavily, like, parent-child relationships, and the, like, nature is a big factor in both of them, whether it's, like, finding yourself in nature or, again, highlighting the importance of, like, protecting nature. So those could be good. If you wanted like heavy nature, but more like contemporary, faster paced stories of adventure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if there's another really slow paced, like good movie you could pair with this one.
I was thinking I would pair it with RMN, that Romanian film from 2022 that I was telling you about, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
That was a standout double feature to me because my favorite scene from RMN is a really intense town hall meeting that they have that's also quite long and I think is the key set piece of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And it's filmed completely differently than the way they do it in Evil Does Not Exist. In RMN, it's very interesting because they lock the camera down and they don't move it. And it's also all one take for at least like 10 to 20 minutes of people arguing in the town hall. And sometimes people out of frame are speaking. Sometimes people in frame are speaking. And it's a town hall that's happening because a small town in Romania has been coming to a crisis point. And the crisis point isn't about anything ecological in RMN, but it's still a contemporary issue that forces the town to examine its inner workings and its attitudes. And so I thought that would be a really interesting double feature.
This one's a bit of a hear me out moment, but I think you could do Fern Gully.
See, I was thinking about that earlier while Kat was talking about the villainous side being monolithic in a way, but I think the point stands.
I was thinking, I haven't seen this, so you tell me if I'm wrong, Remy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this could pair well with the documentary that you brought up a while back. Is it A Year in the Taiga?
Happy People, A Year in the
Happy
Taiga?
People, A Year in the Taiga. Yeah, just because of like the procedural nature of things. And it kind of, just because that's the part I think I liked the most about this film was like watching them kind of like go about their daily business. And like,
I definitely think that could be compatible. If you like watching Takumi do his odd jobs and chopping wood especially, you should definitely check out Happy People, A Year in the Taiga.
Yeah. With a happier ending.
Yeah, you could say that. Less confusing ending, for sure.
Oh, man. Yeah. But, like, don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed this movie. I think I rated it, like, 4 out of 5 stars on my Letterboxd. Like, I really enjoyed it. I think the end just kind of lost me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But
fair.
Yeah, because my initial interpretation was much like yours, where I was like, did he trade the guy's life for his daughter's life and then take her? And I don't know, I was very confused at first, but...
In fairness and full transparency, I think Remy's probably more right, but I also found myself regularly paying more attention to the plants in this movie than the actual movie, and then having to be like, wait a minute, I'm watching a movie.
Well, to your point, there was a visual motif in the film that I was trying to work out the symbolism for, and it's the visual motif of the frozen pond, where there's just one small section of the pond that's open to the water and not frozen over, and they return to it a few times, and it's also the central feature of the movie poster for Evil Does Not Exist. And so that's one of the reasons why I was trying to puzzle out the significance of that pond and the fact that some of it's not frozen over. And that could be an interesting visual representation of a thin space like you're talking about, where there's a solid wall between two states, and except for one small part. And if you know that part, then interesting things can happen there. So that would be more compatible with your interpretation of the ending.
It's interesting you say that, because I could also see a world in which that clear spot of the ice is meant to be like, we're still connected to our resources in this one thin spot, and everywhere else we've walled ourselves off as humanity. So it could go either way.
Yeah, that was my original thought, where it's like we've ruined basically everything except for this one spot where we still have access to something good, and therefore we should work extra hard to preserve that little spot that's left. So I think that's also valid.
But also, from a more practical standpoint, not like from a visual motif symbolism perspective, I think that one of the reasons that he probably tells her to avoid that field, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but I think that watering hole is in the field, right? Like near that field.
That was the impression I had.
Yeah, I think you have to cross the field or something to get to it, maybe.
It's like near it.
Yeah.
And if that's where the deer are gathering to drink, that's where the hunters are going to be hunting the deer, because they can predict where the deer are going to be. So it's an especially dangerous area for the girl to be, because the hunters are going to be nearer to that area if they're tracking the deer there.
Yeah, and the deer have no cover, so it would be an obvious place to wait for them.
So yeah, maybe that's why the chief knew that the field was so dangerous, because I wasn't
He's just
sure
being
why
pragmatic. Yeah.
Well, I just didn't know why he knew that the field was so dangerous, because I was like, what's this mystical stay away from that field? I was like, I don't know what's so dangerous about the field. Is she gonna fall into the water? I don't know.
I think that's a good point.
But I think that that's probably the logical, why the chief was warning her about it. I just wish that he would have told her and told her dad, I don't know, hindsight's 20/20, I guess, but I just wish he would have been like, hey, you know how the deer drink from that water? The hunters hunt the deer when they're drinking from that water. You could get hit by a stray bullet or something. Don't go there. It takes a village to kill a child. So.
Kat, you're so mad.
I just feel like the girl didn't need to die.
I feel like a pull quote for this entire episode should just be, it takes a village to kill a child.
Definitely use that as the tagline.
I don't think that's what they wanted me to say.
I don't think that's the point.
I certainly don't think that. I think the director would not be proud of my interpretation of this film.
Okay, but
however,
at the same time, hear me out. Maybe he'd listen, because he'd be like, these bitches got it so wrong. And then he'd have to weigh in and tell us who was right, or if we're all right. I think Remy's right, but...
Maybe we're all right.
Is it clickbait if you believe it at least 98%
Maybe they were all
time?
Ghosts.
Maybe.
Wait, okay, do we think that when the guy gets back up, sorry, more spoilers if you have come back for some reason, more spoilers. When the guy that got strangled gets back up, do we think he's a ghost? Or do we think he's just somehow still alive? Because he's foaming at the mouth.
Maybe he's also... I think it depends again. Whose interpretation are we going with? Because if you're going with my initial interpretation, he's definitely a ghost. But if you're going with Remy's interpretation, maybe he just has a random shot of adrenaline and he's foaming at the mouth to be now he's the gut shot deer.
Well, I was just thinking... He didn't strangle him nearly long enough to actually kill him. That takes much longer than the 40 seconds that we see on screen. So I was just like, oh, he passed out and now he's revived and wandering around.
Also fair.
Foaming at the mouth feels really severe.
I guess maybe he crushed his windpipe, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I
don't know enough about...
spooked out.
Listen, I don't know enough about throat bits to know if squashing a windpipe would make you look rabid or not. If anyone on this podcast, if anyone here knows, let me know.
Yeah, you might be right, because I just wasn't sure what the interpretation should be, because to me it kind of looked like he was a ghost, but kind of stumbling around, kind of trapped there.
I also got a trapped vibe.
I feel bad for him.
Could be lack of oxygen. I don't know.
If he's alive, I feel bad. I feel bad that he just got his dreams ripped away.
Yeah.
He probably does not want to stay there anymore.
Probably not. No.
Probably feels pretty upset. A little litigious, maybe.
Oh no.
Maybe not. Who knows? Probably a little litigious. But yeah, I thought it was excellent. I thought it was a really fun movie. I thought it definitely has a lot to think about.
Yeah, it made me really want to drink that water out of the stream and also eat the wild wasabi leaves. That looked so good.
I did take plant notes if you guys want any floral fun facts.
Yes,
absolutely.
Please.
Okay,
Please.
Let me review them. Oh, so they actually have 2 really great edibles that are very good for you. Siberian ginseng, which is a great antioxidant. It's really great for fighting inflammation. So especially as they're moving into the winter, that would be super important because they're also antimicrobial. So they have all kinds of medicine growing around them, which is really awesome. And also a cool thing about nature is typically like the things that you need to be healthy will be like available to you at that time or around you. So like in a wet mountainy town, you're going to get like bronchitis and stuff. Siberian ginseng is great for kind of clearing out your sinuses. Any kind of ginseng or ginger is. And it's also like a warming herb in Chinese medicine, which is important if you live in a cold place.
Mm-hmm.
And then wasabi, I also appreciated they're placing these things accurately. Mm-hmm. So, fun fact, nothing, at first I was like, let me double check, but this all seems legit. Like they have scrub oak and pine growing together. Japanese dogwood, the kind of dogwood that they reference a lot in that movie, also grows in that region of Japan. So it's all accurate. Like wasabi does only grow in very specific, like clear, clean patches where there's a lot of water constantly rushing. So that would be the only place they could find it. And wild wasabi is kind of like really spicy Brussels sprouts. They're in the same family, the mustard family, so they're really hardy.
It did look like mustard. It looked like, what's the invasive one that you can find?
Oh, I always just call it wild mustard.
Maybe that's what it's called.
Or I hate you mustard.
I hate you mustard. Hold on. I'll look it up really quick.
But yes, they're related. And then that's filled with a bunch of like really important key nutrients, and it's something that you'd be able to find like later in the growing season. So as we're running out of different sources for our vitamins and things, wild wasabi would be important. The root is also spicier than the leaves. So like if you're just garnishing with the leaves, or I believe they said they use the leaves in the noodles, it wouldn't be like that horseradish kind of spicy. It would be like when you eat, I'm trying to think of a good bitter green, kind of like a peppery arugula.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. So, like, in the noodles, it would just give more of a peppercorn vibe than, like, a horseradish nose-running kind of vibe. Mm-hmm. But would still be warming, so that would be nice.
I wanted to eat those noodles so bad.
So bad.
They did look so good. I could have watched her cook noodles all day, too.
Yeah.
Like, I could have just watched every aspect of that. The invasive plant I was trying to think of is garlic mustard.
There we go.
You guys should look up what that looks like and then forage some for yourself because it's edible and it's invasive and you should pull it out when you see it.
And it's really tasty, especially if you get it before it bolts. Also, did you guys know, this is my new favorite, one of my other friends who's also very into herbal medicine recently told me that wild lettuce has like some enzymes and things in it that are like anti-anxiety. So I'd also like all of you to adapt and glom on to me telling people to go suck lettuce when they need to calm down.
That's amazing. I need to suck a lot of lettuce.
Yeah, me too. If you guys see me with, like, pre-bagged Caesar just sucking away at the grocery store, mind your business.
In the grocery store. You're not even going to leave the grocery store.
The grocery store causes me enough anxiety that I honestly feel if that's what it takes to get me through, no one should say anything to me. If you see someone sucking lettuce...
We are not demure.
No.
We are sucking lettuce.
We're sucking... In 2024 and beyond, we're sucking lettuce. Being mindful is out the window for me.
Mm-hmm.
The number of times I was just staring at the plants and then Jack would be like, are you watching the movie? And I was like, yes, but also no. Those were the main ones. Because those are also probably like the most popular things you would forage for in that region. I mean, obviously with oak, they've got acorns and stuff too, but.
Oh, yeah. That's perfect. Thank you, Em.
Yeah. We didn't see very much wildlife aside from deer. Not
some birds flying around.
Yeah. Well, I guess we saw some like soaring.
Yeah, some soaring
birds.
Also, I want to go to their dinner parties so bad.
I know.
Yeah.
Like, they're just foraging stuff for each other and doing little trades.
That was awesome.
I want to be best friends with the chief.
He's cool.
He's
I want to hang out with the chief.
Using my feathers in instrument making, I was like, all right, these people are learning relevant skills. Like, I no longer want to learn coding. I don't want to talk about it. I want to learn whatever he's doing. How do I make instruments with bird feathers?
Also, I want to hear his son play the harpsichord with the feather.
And why wasn't that in the film? That's my one big critique. What the heck?
Where's the harpsichord?
Yeah, how are you going to tease us?
I wanted, like, him playing the harpsichord for the daughter, because the daughter misses her mom. And that daughter needs some music in her life.
Yeah.
If she'd had some music, maybe she wouldn't have gone wandering in the field.
Here's the thing. They could have written her a harpsichord jingle, like, don't go in the field, you'll die. And then she would have known. She probably just couldn't remember. And if she had a harpsichord PSA...
It takes a harpsichord PSA to raise a child.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Em, for joining us for our discussion of Evil Does Not Exist. And if you have not already listened to the first part of this 2-part series on Rooted's feed, head on over to Rooted's feed and go listen to our discussion of yokai. And we'll see you back here in a couple of weeks. Bye!
Bye! Thanks for joining us this week on FrennDiagram. Thank you to Tyler Seek for the creation of our intro and outro music. Did you take any of our recommendations? Have any thoughts on the show? Let us know at FrennDiagramPod@gmail.com, and we might read your email on a future episode. If you can, please take a moment to rate and review the show on your podcast app of choice, and we'll see you back here, same place next week. Bye for now.